When people hear emulsifier, they picture a suspicious chemical keeping a snack creamy. But mayonnaise, lecithin, gums, carrageenan, and polysorbate 80 are not the same thing. Some are food ingredients, some are additives, and some show up in supplement delivery systems. What are we actually talking about when a label says emulsifier?
At the kitchen level, an emulsifier has a fat-loving side and a water-loving side. It parks at the border of oil and water, making tiny droplets less likely to merge. In foods, that can improve texture, mouthfeel, and shelf stability. In supplements, similar delivery systems can sometimes change absorption of fat-soluble compounds, which is useful but also a reminder that formulation is biologically active. After swallowing, these additives do not simply vanish. Some move through the stomach and small intestine with food, bile, digestive enzymes, mucus, and microbes. The research questions are very specific. Does an additive, thin mucus shift microbial metabolism, change short-chain fatty acids, alter permeability, or trigger measurable inflammation? Those are separate biological checkpoints, not one guaranteed chain reaction from ingredient label to disease. Animal and feed studies are useful for mechanism, but they can point in different directions depending on the animal and goal. A 2026 poultry meta-analysis found emulsifier supplementation increased lipase activity and lipid turnover pathways in broiler chickens, including genes and pathways tied to fat metabolism. That is real biology, but it is not proof that a packaged cookie emulsifier harms or helps a human gut.
So if a video says emulsifiers damage the gut, the missing sentence is, which emulsifier, at what dose, in whom, and compared with what diet? Is that the right way to challenge the claim before we turn a chemistry category into a personal rule?
Yes, and the most directly relevant packet study did that. 60 healthy adults first ate an emulsifier-free diet for 2 weeks. Then, in a blinded randomized phase, they continued that diet and received brownies containing carboxymethylcellulose, polysorbate 80, carrageenan, soy lecithin, native rice starch, or no additive for 4 weeks. That design isolates additives better than just comparing people who eat more packaged food.
What actually moved in that trial? Because I hear microbiome and immediately want to know whether people felt worse, got inflamed, or just had a lab marker wiggle. And if short-chain fatty acids changed, should we read that as harm or only as a clue that microbes were doing something different?
That distinction matters clinically. In the trial, alpha diversity stayed stable, but microbial composition and short-chain fatty acids shifted. Carboxymethylcellulose showed lower short-chain fatty acids compared with placebo. Yet fecal calprotectin, C-reactive protein, lipopolysaccharide-binding protein, and cardiometabolic proteins did not differ at the end. So an ingredient list cannot diagnose leaky gut, IBD, or inflammation. It can only suggest a dietary exposure worth examining.
Carrageenan often gets singled out, especially in gut health conversations. Did that trial make it look uniquely dangerous, or was the signal too narrow to carry that conclusion? I'm trying to separate a reasonable hypothesis from a headline that makes every carton of food feel threatening.
The carrageenan group had increased transcellular intestinal permeability compared with baseline, with a reported p-value of 0.04. That is worth following because barrier function is biologically meaningful. But it was in healthy participants over 4 weeks and did not come with broad inflammatory or metabolic changes. I would call it a specific early signal, not a verdict or a diagnosis. Another useful study built high and low emulsifier diets for Crohn's research. The high emulsifier plan contained 41 emulsifiers and about 2.8 grams per day, where quantified did not exceed acceptable daily intake and was higher in ultra-processed foods. That tells us real-life exposure is tangled with the whole packaged food pattern. Additives, texture engineering, sweeteners, refined starches, and convenience choices travel together.
Who is the reasonable person to experiment with lowering emulsifiers? Someone with diagnosed Crohn's? A healthy person chasing perfect microbiome scores? Or someone who eats a lot of packaged foods and wants a practical first step? I'm guessing baseline matters more than fear. If your diet is already mostly simple foods, the expected change is smaller.
For diagnosed Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, unexplained weight loss, bleeding, anemia, fever, or persistent diarrhea, this is not a solo label project. Diet can matter, but medication decisions, inflammation monitoring, and nutrition adequacy need a clinician. For a generally healthy person, a 2 to 4 week lower emulsifier trial is more like a structured diet quality experiment, not treatment for an undiagnosed condition.
If someone tries that experiment, how should they read labels without spiraling? Are they looking for every gum and lecithin, or mainly shifting from long packaged food lists towards simpler meals? And should they judge one ingredient in isolation, or count how often the same style of product appears across the day?
I would make the outcome boring and trackable: stool pattern, bloating, urgency, abdominal pain, energy, and the number of highly processed products per day. Do not expect a home microbiome score to validate the experiment. In the trial, cholesterol dropped after the emulsifier-free run-in, but that may reflect the broader diet shift, not emulsifier removal alone. If nothing changes after several weeks, the label focus may not be your main lever.
One more confusion. Some supplements advertise self-emulsifying systems as a benefit for absorption. Should people separate that from food emulsifiers in packaged snacks, especially if they take medications or concentrated products? It seems different to eat a sauce stabilizer occasionally than to use a formula designed to raise blood levels of a compound.
Exactly. The clean bottom line is, emulsifiers are a chemistry category, not a single health effect. Human evidence now shows some specific gut metabolite and permeability signals, but not consistent inflammation or clinical outcome changes in healthy adults. The most defensible move is not panic. It is reducing reliance on ultra-processed foods, watching your own symptoms, and treating medical disease as medical disease. Separate the additive, the dose, the person, and the outcome before deciding.